or rewatches this to go on, read those, or read whatever section they're interested in, comment. Please send their comments to us. We have an input box on the website where they can go in and send us their comments, or they can come in and talk to us however they like to communicate with us. So with that being said, the first chapter that I'd like to start with is our housing. And again, there's a lot to it, and fortunately we're making progress in a lot of these areas. I know it's slow, but some of the things that the city has undertaken in the last 5 years have really helped. The Code Enforcement and Building Department have done a fantastic job of tearing down dilapidated buildings. Our own pool house is just the latest of that, and they are still working on their list. And so that has helped quite a bit. We've also seen a lot of new housing come in, which has increased our ratings. So on page 3.2 of the housing study, I just want to mention some numbers. Back in 2015, our percentage of housing that was considered to be in standard condition was at 40%. In the last 5 years, we have changed that from 40% to 58%. And so we have improved the quality of our housing, which is fantastic. We've also decreased the percentage of deteriorated condition from 39 to 33%, which is also the direction we want to be going for that. And finally, the biggest improvement is the drop in dilapidated condition from 22% down to 9%. Now that still means that about 1/10 of our housing stock is dilapidated, which means it's in substandard living conditions. And so we still have a lot of programs that we need to implement, but we are definitely moving in the right direction with code enforcement, with our recent legislation on how we recoup those demolitions, going through the court process. And so we are definitely moving in the right direction there. So again, if you look at your cheat sheet, there's several goals on pages 334 to 336. And I don't want to go through each of these line items, but I do want to talk about the goal heading itself. So the first one is goal 3.1, which says to renovate or replace occupied substandard housing and support housing stock resiliency. And so going through this goal, it means that we'd be looking for grants from the state, from the feds, to be able to help people who are currently in their home to either improve their home or to rebuild their home. And so there are certain programs out there where if a property owner owns the property itself, these grants will pay to tear down their home, build a new home, and then it's a very low or zero interest mortgage for them from that point on. And so in a previous city that I've worked in, they were very successful with this. The only problem is that those grants kind of ebb and flow on their availability and how much money, and so we'll have to keep a heads up for that. Goal 3.2, which is remove vacant, dilapidated structures. Again, I think this is probably the area that we're making the most improvement on. Code enforcement's doing a fantastic job of pursuing those cases, but obviously there's more to be done. One of the things that it mentions as a recommendation is to consider hiring additional staff in code enforcement. And I agree with that. However, our current fiscal situation kind of prohibits that. I would even go one step further to say that if housing is going to be a primary focus of the city, that we probably need to have a dedicated employee whose job is to work on housing. And that could be for working with the housing authority, that could be pursuing grants, that could be working with code enforcement and helping them coordinate these different activities. But if it's going to be one of our priorities, where you put your resources is the demonstration of what your priorities really are. Again, we're not in a position right now to be adding additional staff, but I would just put that in the back of your mind as we we continue through this. Goal 3.3 is to pursue diverse and affordable housing. We're starting to see that. The EDC, as was mentioned earlier tonight, they've invested a lot of money in subdivisions, and we're starting to see some of the fruits of their labors as we're getting some developers coming online to hopefully bring down some of the costs. We've also got some apartment complexes that are being constructed and about to open, which gives new options. And so we are starting to see more diverse. The affordable side of things is relative right now. Even with the downturn in the economy, we're still seeing what I would consider to be elevated rates. And in the study by GrantWorks, it actually calculates what would be considered affordable housing for our city, based on average income and percentage of income that should go towards housing. And so I would recommend looking into that. The next one, and this applies to everyone throughout the city with all of our landowners who rent, and also with the housing authority, but that's to continue to support fair housing initiatives. One of the things that we sign when we accept grants, like the one that we got to write this comprehensive plan update, we agree that we will support federal fair housing regulations. And so that is something that we need to continue to support, and it's a goal of here. Goal 3.5 is to attract economically stable residential development that complements existing development. And so we need to keep looking for housing of all types, all shapes, all sizes, and we need to find a way to make it attractive. We are working on that currently through trying to reduce the amount of time it takes for plan review. Our team has taken that from what was about 8 weeks down to about 2 weeks. And so a big kudos to the building department for their plan review efforts because they have really reduced that. Unfortunately, we still have the reputation of not being builder friendly. I don't know why that is, because we've made great strides in that department. And so we just need to do some positive politicking on our behalf for that. But as we continue to look, we've got our residential revolving loan fund and some other opportunities. And so we want to continue to work in those areas. I think we'll move on unless there's any questions about housing and where we're sitting with that.
How do you keep them from being vacant?
How do you keep them from being vacant?
Like because I read it was like boom or bust. I know.
It is boom or bust, and I'm not. I personally am not so worried about vacant homes that are occupiable, if that's even the right word. Donnie says yes, so I'm validated. My concern are the homes where mom or dad or grandpa have passed away, and if that home has gone to kids or grandkids who may live in Austin or out of the state and who are not here to take care of it. Those are the ones that tend to fall into the dilapidated state where you start having trees grow up around the house and the roof starts falling in. Those are the ones that we really need to work on. I know Mr. Winkles and Mr. McKinney work very hard trying to locate property owners. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult.
I would say the majority of the dilapidated are absentee owners.
Yeah, and trying to track them down is a challenge. There's some things that we can do with that. We can work with the appraisal district to try to improve our data. You know all about our data, and you are our go-to for data. But having improved data and having improved contact with those people, because there are developers looking to build new homes, they just need land.
Yeah, I saw there was $500. So if you like an incentive to demolish it, like we would demolish it, and what was I don't know where that was, or it's a maintenance. So I'm not sure where it was.
And we actually have programs already. I'd be lying, but I think it's 2015 or 2016, we have a program where if someone wants to demolish their home, that we have reduced rates to help with their roll-offs for those purposes. We do need to dust those off and bring those back, make sure that they're updated, especially with our new master fee schedule.
To access like these grants, would there be in the future? Because I know there's like on like a certain page, applying for grants. Because I know a lot of people don't even want to come to City Hall, or obviously, but is there a way to access these things outside of this?
There are. So pretty much any grant that we would be participating in is available on state and federal websites. It's just a matter of knowing where those are. And sometimes that's finding the needle in the haystack to find them. We need to do a revamp of our website, and it would certainly be possible to include links to those programs. But again, as far as having someone on staff to help our citizens walk through those processes, we really don't have the available manpower to do that right now. Any questions about housing?
Everything you're telling us, I mean, we know.
There's work to be done,
Yeah.
but we're doing okay. I'm going to move on to economic development, and this is the longest chapter with the most data. They did a fantastic job putting this together. I sent this to Mr. Winkles right after we got the electronic version. He's been voraciously reading it.
I read it twice.
He's read it twice. He's found some spelling and some names that need to be changed. So he has definitely put a magnifying glass on this chapter. If you're going to read an entire chapter out of this entire 250 plus pages, I would recommend that you read Chapter 8, Economic Development. As Mr. Winkles can attest, economic development touches every aspect of the city. Beautification, yep, economic development. Utilities, yep, economic development. Walkability, parks, livability. You know, if you want to bring in a company, they want the city to be a place where their employees want to live and work. And so all of that ties into economic development. So if you want to get a very good look at the direction that we should be going and how everything ties together, I would really recommend Chapter 8. And I was very pleased in reading this. Again, I'm going off your cheat sheet. If we go to page 8-43, I was very pleased because a lot of the recommendations that came back from GrantWorks are actually very similar to what the council has set as part of the strategic map. And so you all had already identified a lot of what we need to be working on. Again, I just want to hit the high points. There's lots of sub-points that we need to be working on, but just to get everyone's creative juices flowing. Goal 7.1, which is actually 8.1, market Pecos as an attractive place to visit, live, and work. Yeah, we know we need to do that. And so we need to we need to implement some of these recommendations in order to know how to market. Working with the Chamber of Commerce and the EDC is going to be critical in part of this because they have the resources and the talent and the experience in doing that. And so, we need to make sure that we're strengthening those ties as well. Goal 8.2 is develop a support system for existing businesses, focus on diverse business growth and workforce training, and information readily available on the local economy. We need to work with Odessa College and anyone else that will come help us with workforce development. One of my goals, and I've got a nice whiteboard in my office, I would love for Pecos High graduates to be able to find a career here. Whether they decide to go to college in between, coming back, there's lots of different career paths. But I would love for them to have a career to come back as an EMT or a firefighter or a police officer, work at City Hall. Yeah, they can come back and work in the oil field, but we would love to have them working for the city or for the county and have them dedicated in that. But there are a lot of business needs. There's a lot of need for welders. There's a lot of need for support services in the well field. Someone who can do SCADA, like we were talking earlier, that's a skill. And if they can do that, we want to have that talented pool. And as we know, diversification is the key. We've seen the downturn this year, and we have definitely felt it. Diversification is not necessarily the magic bullet, but it does help soften some of the blow. And so that is something that we want to be working towards.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
A comment on diversification. With the oil field coming in, there's so many other businesses that came with it, and like you said about the high school and Odessa College and all that. And there's programs out there, where they can do the welding, train welding without having, like a trade school. Because college is not for everyone.
Right.
But a trade school to go do whatever, as management, even, the stores that come in through here, the knowledge that's out there, the technology, that's what moves everything, is technology now. Yeah. And with Odessa College, maybe Midland College, to offer the courses through the schools, would open it up for our young kids to want to come back. We got the prison, there's kids that like law enforcement that come in with that. So it's just like you said, it's going to be us preparing our kids, but preparing the town to receive, so that we can give them something that they want to come back to Pecos. We have to make that offer, the beautification, the opportunity that they can actually come here and make a good living in working for the city, for the county, for anybody. But it's going to have to be all of us working together to open it up to them, and also as parents to talk to our kids and say, hey, there's a good opportunity to come back, because they go out there, I can tell you, it's not greener over there when the way they think. But they're young, and they got to go out and experience the world. But
well, it's good that you say that, because that dovetails right into the next one.
Go ahead.
And I'll come back to, because you made some very great points. But the next goal that it says is to ensure that Pecos's downtown and thoroughfares are attractive, functional, and improve the quality of life for residents and businesses. And then it also says that we need to have nightlife. We need to have things for our youth to come back, so that they can come back and enjoy it, and not be drawn to Austin or Houston or whatever other hotspots. I'm not young enough to know.
Our downtown area, I've always seen it as an opportunity that we can be very inviting. There's already restaurants there that are coming. We got a lot of buildings that are really historical buildings. If they could take care of them and bring them back up and open little pubs, little something like this place stays packed.
Yep.
But if we open it up
within the COVID limits.
Yeah. and if we open it up and give them that opportunity, people be parked and walk.
Yeah.
And do the thing like in I've been to they're in the Dallas area, or Fort Worth, West End, I think that's what they call it, 6th Street in Austin. Where it attracts, and it's mostly young folks. But we have to give them something.
Yeah. Well, and we're starting to see the downtown come back a little bit. We're starting to see some loft apartments come in, which is nice. We're starting to see some of those restaurants come in. There's lots of opportunities here. We just need to capitalize on them and continue to push them. Councilman, back to your point, there's lots of different opportunities here. We've got 20 hotels? 23 hotels. And I don't know the count of restaurants. Mr. Winkles, he's our data manager. But we've got quite a few restaurants.
Not hotels, not hotels.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, opening that baseball field and having those kind of attractions come in, it'll attract the people. And there's people who are going out. If there's an opportunity for employment, there's a brand new hospital coming. With that new hospital, there'll probably be a pharmacy coming in that general area just to service that, doctor's offices. Mm-hmm. And some of our kids are leaving. They're making great careers in other towns. We just got to open that to them, for them to come back home And it would be awesome to see that. But that's an opportunity for us to start pushing it as the adults, I guess. And, you know,
Well,
just
and
to encourage them.
identifying those
Yes.
underserved areas, the reason I ask about hotels and restaurants is because there's a whole hospitality, what's the word I'm looking for? Industry, that's the word.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've got a whole industry here. We're located on I-20. We've got the oil field. We're hoping to bring in a lot with the baseball complex, and that's an entire industry that people can, you know, learn how to become hotel managers, how to run a restaurant, and there's opportunities here for everybody, regardless of what their love is.
It's a vision that we have to put out there. The vision
It is.
that and sell the vision of how we're going to see our towns, how we want to see it. Because one thing's talking about it, and the other thing is jumping into it. And you know, when people see things happen, man, I love it. When I'm driving somewhere, man, what is that? Like when they built that new top Dollar General. Dollar General, great, man. I pass by there every afternoon. I go, I see what changed it. I'm going by the baseball field, same way. It's something different, and people like to see new things come into our town. So I believe as we move forward,
We gotta trust the process too.
yeah, the process has to
Believe in it.
be. But I would love to see downtown.
The downtown is the biggest obstacle,
Yeah,
I would say. And the obstacle that I've run into is actually not the absentee ownership, but the local ownership that just does not want to sell.
yeah.
But
Some of that has to do with maybe education.
It is. It's education, and it's getting them to see what downtown. Downtown, I've made this statement before, and downtown will never be like it was in the '60s and '70s.
Right.
But it can darn sure be a lot better than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that
Sure
opportunity.
can.
We've got the new restaurant coming in. We've had a couple new offices being built. Y'all are renovating the old Fontaines building. So from the depot south, that 2-block area, especially over into this area, we've got a great opportunity. It's a
Yep.
challenge.
It's a challenge.
But it's a bigger opportunity than challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I read on the activating lots, the vacant lots, are we doing anything for temporary use? Like, maybe like I saw on here, they were like community garden, food truck lot, farmer's market, or garden-based learning, something like that, like,
So-
anything being looked at.
As of right now, we don't. And part of that is we're in Texas and people get a little bit,
It's their land.
it's their land.
It's their land.
Yeah.
And so, one of the keys to that is going to be identifying those that have vacant land that are willing to do it. We don't want to get into the situation where the city's encouraging any kind of squatting activity where we don't have permission to be there. And again, this is a coordination thing, making sure that we're in contact with the landowners, that they're okay with it. I know the hospital has done a community garden that's really taken off this year. They had some huge plants growing in there. And so, you know, the hospital kind of set the stage for that, but we have a lot of opportunities that we could do, we just aren't doing yet.
And plus the ownership of those vacant lots, I've got, I think 92 turned down letters.
Yeah, they're not motivated to sell, unfortunately.
That's
and that
exactly
makes it-
right. I've got
makes it
a
hard.
list, I've got a stack on one of my shelves. I think it's 92 turned down letters. Over, first couple of years I was here, but it's a challenge. It's, it's an opportunity, but it's a challenge.
Now, Seth, when we work on the study, on the plan, how much, if you're looking at we're talking about what 10-year plan. Now, what do you take into account for your growth in a plan when you're doing this? I mean, hopefully growth is what you look for every year. You want to be a little more, but how much growth do you sometimes when you work on something like this do you take into consideration on a yearly basis?
I think that was
So I skipped that chapter, but you bring up a very good point, so I'm going to go back to it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, you want to
No,
go backward.
no. Don't be sorry by any means. That's the whole purpose of this workshop. So they did a population analysis as part of this, they take a couple different averages, a couple different approaches. The number that they came up with is that in the next 10 years we would be approximately 14,320 residents by 2030. I personally think that's slow, but it's realistic. To add roughly 4,000 people to our permanent population base. We saw at the height of the oil, last summer, I would say that we were probably closer to 18 to 20,000 people living within the city limits. But as soon as the oil fell, and as soon as COVID happened, we have probably dropped back down to the 10,000 that we were at before of permanent residents. And so our challenge, our trick, is to get them to become permanent residents. And I think we're making progress. Our parks are looking fantastic. We've done a lot to improve. We basically made new parks. And so, quality of life is starting to really come together. We're about to address some of those other challenges like traffic on 285, the loop. Those are things that are going to make it easier to get around in town and make it nicer to live here. But regardless, adding 4,000 permanent residents is still going to be a challenge. It feeds into housing. One of the things that's identified is the need to infill housing. And again, Mr. Winkles has been working on that now for 5 years. And it's a challenge. But we need to find a way to work with those landowners or encourage them to develop, so that we can take advantage of our existing infrastructure. You all know that it's expensive to build new pipelines to go out to somewhere to serve something new. Well, we've already got the pipelines in town. We've already got the roads in town. If we could just get some buildings in town, then it would be the perfect marriage. We do need to plan on a growth. So 4,000 over 10 years. Let's see, that's 4,400 per year, which is about 4% growth per year.
Okay, Mr. Sawyer, if I may, Mayor, to answer part of your question on planning, what I got out on page 3.2, I made some notes here, was what he referred to, the 14,320 people would require 623 new housing units over that 10 years. And in the last 2 years, counting the last 2 years, the next 3 over Meadowbrook, including the homes, we will be at 264.
So we still got a ways to go.
We still got 400 to go.
Yeah, because again, with the growth, with houses comes good jobs. I can't buy a house if I can't pay for it. So we got that stability when it comes to jobs, job security. Somebody, when we bring in, we always hope for retirement. Because if you don't have a good retirement, sometimes the 401s don't come out the way you want them to sometimes. A good retirement, and that attracts people. Attracts people like me that's more interested about what kind of insurance you got instead of how much I'm going to take home, because I'm getting older and I'm going to get sick or something, you can fall back on. So I guess sometimes they look at not so much the young folks, but you also look at, other people going to come in, people with experience that you're going to want to hire to lead these young ones and let them learn what you know to keep going. So, so that's something, another thing that we need to.
Yeah, and everything builds off of each other, because with more rooftops comes more retail.
Without rooftops, retail does not come. Without rooftops, industry doesn't come. Without rooftops, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's literally everything.
So it all ties together.
So you build it, they will come.
Well,
I think they're coming regardless.
I think the city and the board as a whole has wondered why for the last 5 years I've spent so much time on housing. But if that's the one thing that I took away from the very first training that I had, was without rooftops, retail and industry does not come. So we had to get the rooftops. And that's why you've seen so much activity from my office over 5 years on rooftops.
I think the roadblock that we had was the first speaker that came in talking about the school district. That was kind of relevant to us. I mean, I don't have any kids, I don't have any kids in the school district, but I see that as a huge factor when you have unpermanent buildings being built. But there needs to be some integration and bring them to the table, the school board, school district, everybody. There's what was the meeting that we haven't had in a minute?
The joint entity meeting?
Joint entity,
Strong
because I can tell you right now, be straight up honest with this, I'm not gonna have kids in Pecos, Texas if the school district doesn't change. That's a fact right now. And that inhibits growth. People come to Pecos and they see a school district broken, superintendent's paying 3 of them, you're wasting money, taxpayers' money. I wanna send my kid to a broken school system. That's some integration that needs to be happening, because you can have all the retail and business and stuff like that, oil fields, boom or bust, but you're not gonna keep the population. It's gonna go back down to 8,000, which I saw, was back in, 2010, whenever I was here, when it was 8,000.
Yeah, it's part of the quality of life.
Yeah.
It is,
And
it's pure
it's-
quality of life.
And it's like anything else, because, with the big boom of population that we've had, I think that we were easily at around the 18,000. But out of those 18,000, I don't think those 8,000 people brought their kids. And so, if they were to bring their families, if they were to bring their kids, that's gonna put more on the school district. As they have more kids, they've also got more funding. As they got more funding, teachers, everything builds off of one another. And so, you're exactly right. We can't treat anything like it's a silo or an island. We have to look at everybody helping to rise the tide.
Yeah, it's just so late.
And like everything else, unless a community steps up and gets involved with the city council, because we can't solve all the problems. We're just a voice for the people out there. But when they show up and they voice their concerns, like on school boards, on any other boards out there, because it's about the community, it's about the people out there. We're just the representative for them here. But when they're talking, their voice is a lot louder than mine or any one of us here. And you're right. Like if the school system is broken, one of the reasons we moved from Odessa over here, because this school system was better than the one that I had my boys over there. And good thing they graduated after I left, So I didn't, but I saw what I saw, and this one was a lot better than that one. And I graduated from this one.
Well, I did too.
And I liked it the way it was. We've had issues here in the last few years. I've been here 10 years now, and we've had issues in the school system. But it's something that can be worked. But the community has to get involved, not just allow everybody. I think somebody mentioned, well, the same people come get involved in the same board. Well, it's because they're the only ones that want to step up.
Well, I was asked why I only had 2 applications.
Yeah.
And my pure answer was people want to talk, but not serve.
Right.
Yeah. And we're not perfect. We're not right with everything. We're not gonna please everybody, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to make between all of us, make the right choice, use the wisdom that we have, the God-given wisdom to make the right choice for what. But that's not gonna please everybody. And we just gotta keep on moving forward, and hopefully things change as we move forward. We progress it and make it better.
One of the things that I thought of while I was reading my chapter, and I read all of the 7 or 9 chapters, actually all of it. But one of the things, we had this done in 2015, and I was part of it prior to the EDC. I was just a private citizen. But I know, that was a short 5-year span. That 5 years is here. And I don't believe much of it has been done, but this is a 10-year. This gives the city and the EDC prime opportunity of a roadmap of how we can get there. It's just implementation. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne.
No, that's great.
And one of the things is planning. We can say it's a 10-year plan, but in this first year, this is what I want to tackle. Into agreement, everybody, let's tackle this piece and see, take it a piece at a time.
Well, like Mr. Sorensen said, I would encourage you to read chapter 8. It'll take you about 2.5 hours. The whole book will take you about 8. I can tell you all 8 chapters. But if you have any questions, I've got notes made, things marked, things that I can implement, and the roadmap that I can use for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I'd rather have it printed. I don't like reading on the
Oh,
computer.
yeah, believe me.
Oh, I should have mentioned that. If anyone does want it printed, please let us know.
I'd love to have one
And
printed.
we'll run off.
Because I'm a reader, I like to read. I read everything.
Yeah, we just didn't want to print them off if you weren't going to use them in hard copy because it is 250 pages. But if you want a hard copy, please let us know and we'll get you one. Okay, absolutely. Any comments on economic development, other than it's really important? No? Okay, well, if you do, we'll come back to it. I do want to promise to keep you within the hour. And so I think the last chapter that I wanted to touch on tonight is the Thoroughfare Plan. And so, as you may recall, within the last year or so, the council has adopted a new transportation plan, and this builds off of that, and supplements it quite a bit. Thoroughfares tend to be your larger roads. Here in Pecos, we've got several of them. Not as many as we'd like, but we're working on that. We've got I-20, we've got 285, we've got 17, we've got 3rd Street, and those are the main ones that are coming into town. We've also got a few of our other ones. We've got Eddy Street, we've got Walthall, which turns into Washington, which turns into I don't know what else, but it has a couple changes. And so we do have some major roads. We've got County Line Road, we've got Lincoln, we've got some roads that are very important. And the Thoroughfare study, this is someone obviously near and dear to me because I'm a nerd, especially when it comes to streets. But this is something that really spoke to me, and since I've gotten this, I've been working on preparing one of the steps, and that's a bicycle plan for the city. We already knew that we had some ADA compliance issues. We don't have a lot of sidewalk in town, and what we do have is not in great shape. And so when you see people walking, right before we had all this rain, I saw people out and about enjoying that cooler weather, and everyone's walking in the street because that's where we have to walk. Luckily, we don't have a great deal of traffic, but it's still not the safest thing. It's not the most attractive thing. And I've been reflecting on that, and we have a policy where landowners, the adjacent landowner, is responsible for their sidewalk. Well, we may have people who can't afford to do that, or who are just fine with it being cracked and broken and not having any. And I wonder if that policy, which we've had in place since the 60s, is what's actually kept people from putting in sidewalk when they're building their home or they're doing a remodel. Because why put it in if I'm just going to have to maintain it? And so I think that's one of the things that we're going to need to come back and revisit is how do we approach sidewalks? How do we prioritize sidewalks? How do we make the city more walkable and interconnected? How do we tie the downtown to our parks, to our schools, to shopping, so that people, whether they're walking or biking, or they've got a little scooter, I don't know what they got, but whatever they've got to get around, which may not be a car, but they can get to those big places and be connected to the community. And so, goal 7.1 right here says develop a thoroughfare system that accommodates pedestrians and bicyclists. And again, this is going to be an undertaking, but I think that we can do it in phases. I think that we can do some lower dollar, not free, but some lower dollar implementations, and then as we start to see some more participation, we can build up to those bigger and nicer systems of a road network and more sidewalks and improved connectivity. We are pretty fortunate here that most of the city is on a grid. We've actually got two different grids coming in at different angles, but you can't get around. You're not going to run into a lot of cul-de-sacs or not be able to get from A to Z. You can usually, if you know where you want to be, you can find a way to get there pretty easy. But we want to make it more encouraging. And again, this is a quality of life, but it's also a drainage thing. One thing that we've already identified is that the east side of town needs a lot of curb and gutter. And so we've been looking at that, and guess what? You're right, we need a lot of curb and gutter. Both for aesthetics, but also for drainage to help us drain. And so we're working on trying to tie all those back together. So I can personally vouch that this is a good goal that I think that the city should be working on. The next goal is 7.2, is ensure that the thoroughfare system maintains its capacity as new development is built and supports safe and rapid movement of people in emergency situations. So basically what that means is make sure that we've got the right size roads as we're hopefully doing infill development, as we're having a new grocery store coming online. Walmart already sees a whole lot of our traffic coming into town. It's only going to get heavier as we now have a grocery store to go to. And so that's going to change traffic patterns. That's the reason why we're undertaking the redesign of Lincoln Street to upgrade it and widen it, put in a traffic signal. We need to continue to do that, continue to look into the future of how traffic is going to impact us as we're growing. We've had the opportunity to work with TxDOT as they're working on their corridor study for I-20, as well as 17 and 285, and what other project is it? Oh, the loop, the bypass. And so TxDOT is looking at us. Our efforts to get on their radar have paid off, and we're very grateful for them for putting forth some effort and a lot of dollars to help in Pecos. We haven't seen that in the past, but we're starting to see that change, and so we're very grateful for that, and that's going to be integral to our Thoroughfare Plan to make sure that we're getting people around. But we've got to continue planning for that. As you know, roads are not cheap, especially brand new roads. They're not cheap at all. They're probably one of the most expensive per foot systems that we have as a city, and they're expensive to maintain after they're in. That's why we've got to make sure that, again, we've got a plan like this, and that we're following that plan, and then we can come up with a way to pay for that plan. But we do have some needs. We do need some new roads. We do need some connectivity. One of the things that this plan identifies is that we need to be able to get across I-20 better. With the new baseball complex, and whether or not the school district ever puts a new campus south of the interstate, we're going to need a lot more ways to get back and cross. And so we're trying to work with TxDOT on that. But these are things that also help our economy, because if you've got easy on, easy off at an interchange, everyone wants that hot corner. That's why our McDonald's does so well with the pilot there, because it's on a hot corner. And so, anyways.
Ask a question. While I was reading this, and you brought something up in my mind. It's got to be 10 or 15 years ago, help me here, Mayor, when the city and maybe TxDOT did the Safe Route to School sidewalk plan. Yeah. And I know Crockett and Austin got that. It's been years since I've been over at Bessie Haynes. My kid's been gone for 20 years. No. Is it around Bessie Haynes or anywhere else? Was it built on that side?
Bessie Haynes,
it didn't, and we've got sidewalks that go to nowhere. So we've got areas of town where we were able to get the SRTS grant, and we've got beautiful sidewalks. And then on the other side of the street, there's nothing.
Well, I just know it's around Crockett, because I walk it, and that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
I did not know around the Bessie Haynes or anywhere else.
Yeah, and as far as that goes, our school zones aren't even very well defined, and that's something that we need to work on. as we're working on the traffic signals on 285, I really think that having a signal at 7th and 12th is really going to help the cross-town traffic and the school safety.
Yes, how does how does one create, like when you go to bigger towns, they have your off ramps and they're both one way.
Come see me. I've got a copy of the, I think Seth also may have it, I've got a copy of the 10-year proposed plan.
But I think that would help when you make it one way.
It's not public, but I'll be glad to show it to you.
That is part of the discussion that TxDOT's having with their I-20 corridor study, is turning all of the frontage roads into one way, which just reinforces our need to have good
Yes.
north-south
I think so.
connectivity as well.
I think so.
Yeah, come by my office, I'll be glad to show it to you.
Thank you.
So, with this, it's, I could go on and on, but I promised an hour, so I'm going to kind of
So passionate.
Traffic, it gets us around. Okay, Haven, it's where it's at. Some things that I know that we're going to need to tackle are how we connect to all these different areas, how we're taking care of our pavement, how we're prioritizing our dollars, because our maintenance dollars, I consider it a great blessing to have our dedicated sales tax for road maintenance. But even with that, we've got a lot of needs, and so we've got to prioritize what those needs are, where we're going to put those dollars to have the highest, strongest impact. We're going to need to look at how we're getting people around with our ADA. The council has been kind enough to purchase some equipment for us, which we love. Our wing truck. We love our wing truck. We love our total station that allow us to do that. Those are things that tools that we're going to use as we're doing our ADA study. But we're going to have to look at some funding. We've also got to look at how access control. As you drive around town, this is not to throw dirt or stones at anyone, but we don't have access control in town. People kind of pull up on the curb wherever they want. They've got a 50-foot wide opening to their house instead of just at their driveway. They've got 3 or 4 curb cuts. We don't have access control. And that's going to become important as we're developing thoroughfares, because as you're trying to move more traffic through a street, you want to have less access to the street. That's why you only have an interchange on the interstate every mile at the closest, until you get into Dallas and those areas. But that's why they limit how many on and off ramps you have, is because the more flow you're trying to get through there, the less access you have. And so that's another thing that we're going to need to challenge. But all these things layer on each other, all of them build on each other. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Again, if you have any questions, if the public has any questions, please come talk to us. We're going to make this a process. We weren't really able to do a lot of this public input at the beginning, because that's when COVID was first kicking off. And so we're going to do it now. We do have some typo errors that we need to fix, and if there's different directions, additional directions, or things that we don't want to do or pursue, now's the time to do it before we adopt it as a final plan. Any questions for me?
Thank you for taking the time and giving us your input to do this.
How much is paint?
Paint?
Bike lanes.
That's going to be our first step. So paint is the first one for the bikes. After that, we start looking at actual physical separations, curbs, islands, lighting, landscaping, lighting the street in some cases. But I think our cheapest is to start off with the paint. And let's talk, because I've got some pretty good ideas, I think, but I need to bounce them off somebody. But yeah, we want to start getting people into the mindset of biking, of walking, of being more active, of going to the parks, doing all these things. Not only because it makes them healthier, but because it encourages that sense of community. And it's a lifestyle, and that's one of those things that younger generation is looking for is a lifestyle where they can bike to work and not necessarily have to have a car, those kinds of things. And so everything builds on each other, and it's really exciting when you start looking at the nexus of how all this needs to happen. But I'm nerding out again, so I'm going to stop. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. We will be requesting additional workshops with you to go over some of the other chapters and to get into more detail on this, and also to invite the public out to participate in these workshops. So if you don't have any questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to the mayor.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll get this closed out. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the session. It is time 7:56. Thank you, everybody.